Hey everyone, sorry I couldn't be there today, but I wanted to keep going. All right, so I'm going to record tonight's lecture, or I guess not tonight, I guess it'd be this morning's lecture as you guys will be viewing this on Saturday. Let's take a quick look at what we're going to be talking about today. So, usually, you guys come into class, we do a critical thinking exercise. We're going to go ahead and skip that for today. We're going to go ahead and just keep moving on the residence exercise. I'm going to show you a couple new tools or a couple new tools in the Revit program. One of which will be creating custom wall panels using massing. So we'll look at the massing option inside Revit. And second, we're going to be looking at creating 3D and perspective views. We've already talked about a little bit about that over the last few semesters. Or I'm sorry, not the last few semesters, over the last few weeks. So we'll look at creating 3D views. We're going to skip copy and pasting via clipboard. We've actually talked about that a few times. I may just quickly go over it in a little bit, but I think everyone has a good understanding of copying and pasting via the clipboard. As opposed to new material, we're going to be talking about adding floors to our residence. Okay, so we're going to talk about adding floors, and we're going to continue by adding stairs and railings to our residence. Okay, and we may talk about modifying sub-elements and adding split lines. Okay, so that may be a topic for next time, but that gives you a good idea on what we're going to be discussing today. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's start by learning a little bit about creating wall panels using massing. When creating wall panels from masses, unfortunately, that won't relate to what we're doing for the residents, but it becomes a pretty powerful tool. As a lot of you guys may be understanding, Revit has a tough time with creating kind of non-orthogonal shapes, okay? So when you started to get into the realm of a little bit more custom architecture, maybe you have a canted wall, so you have a sloped wall of some sort, or you start to have some architecture that's not so orthogonal, the massing or creating wall panels from masses becomes a really good option for you to use. Okay, so we're going to look at that today, and let's go ahead and get started. So if you look at the Revit model now, this should give you a good idea where everybody should be. We should all have, at this point, we should have all created our retaining walls. We've all created our substructure of our building. We've also created the exterior walls. Everyone should have picked a finish. You could see that I've created a white or gray lapboard siding. Everyone should have a platform for their future patio. You should also have a platform for your secondary patio, which will come off of this main door. Okay, everyone should have all of their interior walls. All right, so you can see that I have both interior walls for both the first and second floor, along with doors. And then lastly, last class, we actually finished by learning a little bit about creating curtain walls. So we created this curtain wall on this side of the building, this small one, but we also created kind of the more focal point of our building, which is going to be this glass corner. Okay, so this is what we learned last class. So let's talk a little bit about creating walls from masses. Okay, so if we go up to the tab about 5 or 6 to the right of architecture, it says massing in site. Okay, so we're going to click on massing in site, and then we're going to click on in place mass. So a lot of times, as you can see, as I hover my mouse over in place mass, you see this very unique shape. Okay, typically Revit has a hard time with creating walls and massing and shapes in these type of kind of non-orthogonal forms. So luckily there is actually a really good tool that helps us create a lot of those forms, okay? And that's going to be using the mass tool. And how that works is that we create a general mass, and that mass kind of works like SketchUp. If a lot of you have used SketchUp in the past, it allows us to create a very basic shape, and then it allows us to place walls onto those shapes. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So we're going to click on In Place Mass. All right, you're going to get this message that says Revit has enabled the show mask mode. That's okay. Go ahead and just hit close. We're going to give a name to this mask. I'm going to leave it as mask 1. That's okay for now. As I mentioned earlier, this doesn't really relate to what we're doing for the residents, but it'll become a really nice tool should you guys create something non-orthogonal for the final exercise, okay? And I guarantee you'll run into situations where typical orthogonal vertical walls isn't quite exactly what you want to where this works pretty well. A good example of that might be if you're doing like a skyscraper. It's really easy to mask the general shape of the skyscraper and then to add a wall or a curtain wall to that general shape. So let's look at how we do that. So we're going to go ahead and call this mask 1. All right. So as soon as we call this mask 1, we're going to be in kind of the general massing editor mode. So if you look up here at our horizontal ribbon, you'll notice that we have a different selection of tools. Okay. A lot of them look very familiar to what you're probably used to. All right, so you notice that we have our general draw tools here. Those look just like if we're creating detail lines or model lines. That looks very much the same. It also looks the same as if we're drawing walls for what it is that we're working on. All right, we also have a few extra tools to add some dimensions and so forth. Okay, so let's look at creating our first mask. I'm going to start by actually just using the rectangle tool. So you could also use the line tool and create a rectangle if you want, but we'll keep it nice and easy and short and sweet. We're going to click on the rectangle tool, and then I'm going to create a box. All right. For this exercise, it doesn't really matter what the size of that box is. I'm going to go ahead and just make it 35 by 35. Okay. So I went ahead and made that box. I clicked, and you'll see that we've created a square that will end up being the massing of our building. I'm going to hit escape, okay, and then from escape, I'm actually going to hit that twice. That will remove us from that general drawing mode that we were just in. Okay, you still have our tools, but we're no longer drawing. So now, if I select this shape, and I go over and I click on Create Form. I'm going to click on the drop-down menu, and I'm going to click on Solid Form, okay? And what that's going to give us is it's going to give us an actual three-dimensional shape that we can use, okay? And regardless of whether or not you do a circle, you do a polygon, or you create a custom shape using the line tool, you're going to get the same exact effect, okay? So if I go over and let's just create another one really quickly, I'll just make it kind of a generic, kind of a different shape that's not a box. Okay, so we have this shape, and now if I click on it and I click on Create Form, Solid Form, notice that we'll get a shape just like what we had. Okay, I'll keep moving forward with that one. All right, so we have this kind of custom shape that we just created. So let's look at a couple of the different options and how we might edit this shape that we created. This becomes a really good tool when you're kind of using Revit to do some real generic massing. So maybe like really early in design where you don't want to really start putting out walls and you don't really want the finer details of the building. This becomes a really good option. Okay, so we've created our shape, and you'll notice that if you hover your mouse over the shape that we have a couple different options. Okay, so I'm going to first start by hovering my mouse over. Let's actually start with a corner. Okay, so notice that if I hover my mouse over a corner, here, 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 doesn't matter what corner we pick, we're gonna get this little blue dot, okay? So if we click on that corner, we're gonna get this little series of arrows, okay? From there, I can actually continue to manipulate my mass, okay? So notice that I drag that arrow in, that actually starts to create a more custom shape. Okay, we're no longer as orthogonal as we were from the beginning. Okay, we actually now have a canted wall on this side of the building. This wall is still straight, although it does have a curved edge. Okay, but we can continue to push and pull these walls until we get the actual shape that we want. Okay, so notice that as I go over here, I start to create some more custom shapes that might work pretty well for our building. Okay, so there's one. There's kind of a nice canted wall. So those are going to be our edges. Okay, we can push and pull those arrows any way we wish. So unlike an edge or unlike a corner, we can also select an edge. Okay, so if I select this edge, I have the same freedom to manipulate my massing any way that I wish. I can move the wall in. I can also move the wall out, okay, and vice versa. I can continue to start to stretch or push and pull that shape until I get the look that I'm going for. Okay, our third option is going to be to select a face, okay? So we've selected a corner and we've selected an edge. If I hover my mouse over the edge and I hit the tab key, I can keep hitting that tab key until I get the face that I want, okay? So there I just got the top face. So by doing that, I can make the massing taller. I can also make the massing shorter, okay? And I can do the same thing for all of our faces on the outside. Sometimes you may have to hit tab, sometimes you may not. Right there I didn't have to. And that ends up working, pretty well, okay? So let's just manipulate this just a little bit. I'm gonna keep it fairly simple. I'm not gonna get too detailed. But we'll add a couple, we have a couple canted walls. We have a canted wall on this side, and on this side. Actually, we have a canted wall on 4 sides, and then a few straight walls on the remainders, okay? So this is gonna be our massing. I'm gonna go ahead and click on the button that says Finish Mass, okay? So I'm done manipulating the general shape of the building that I may build here in the future. All right, if you want to edit it further, you can actually click on it one time. It will turn blue. You'll notice that you still have a couple different selections. I can still continue to make some basic edits, but if I want to go back to where I just was, I can go over, click on it, click on Edit Mass, and get back to doing exactly what I was doing, okay? So let's click on Finish Mass. All right, so from here, now is how we can continue to actually turn our massing into a more official building, if you will. Okay, so from here, I'm going to go over to Architecture, and I'm going to click on the drop-down menu for Wall, and instead of clicking on Architectural like we have in the past, I'm going to click on Wall by Face. All right, so I'm going to click on Wall by Face, and from here, you notice that if I hover my mouse over the different faces, you'll notice them highlight. Okay, so right now I have a curtain wall. This curtain wall that I have as my wall type is the curtain wall that we actually use to create this wall over here. So I'm actually going to change that. I'm going to start with just a basic wall. Let's start with our core wall that we created earlier in the semester. Okay, and let's just click on one of those faces. Okay, notice that after clicking on that face, so I go over and I click on that face, that we now have that wall that we just created on that canted face. So you have a nice canted wall, okay? You're gonna see some kind of interesting colors and textures to it. Don't let that bog you down at all. That's just the massing that's overlaying that, okay? So before you select the face that you want to apply the wall to, a couple things to keep in mind. Up here, up in our green ribbon, we have a couple things that you're probably familiar with, okay? You can go ahead and select a level, all right? You're not gonna need to do that right now because we're not actually placing a floor, all right? But you'll notice that we have a couple of our constraints, all right? We also have our location line. Right now our location line is on Finish Face Exterior. So when I click on that massing, notice that the wall is actually aligned with the exterior finished face, okay? If I go backwards and I change that to, let's do core center line, all right? And I select that wall, notice that our massing is now on the center line of our core or our stud, okay? So you have the ability to still continue to select a location line even though we're using a massing, okay? As you guys probably know by now, I like to work on core face interior. So if I select that face, our wall will actually be aligned with the interior face of the core, okay? And I can continue to go around and actually select all of my faces, okay? Or I can select as many faces that I want, okay? So keeping it nice and simple, I've actually just selected all of the faces of the little massing that we're just creating, okay? So you can see here that now we have some nice canted walls to work with, okay? So that's gonna be our wall by face feature, all right? And we'll end up learning a little bit more about this here in the future. A few more options that we're not gonna cover at the moment is going to be the roof by face, which if I clicked on roof by face, I can actually just click on the top of this massing and click on create roof, and that would go ahead and create a roof. Okay, so I'm going to Control Z. Actually, you know what? Let's leave that. Let's go forward. Let's actually go through a few more of these options. Okay, so I'm going to delete that roof here just real quick, and I'm going to show you another tool, which is going to be the flooring by massing option. Okay, so before we do that, let's look at how we might continue to edit this mass. So let's say that we decided to make a few changes to this massing. Okay, so let's say we decided to pull this up, and we decided that we wanted to add a couple stories to our massing. So right now you'll notice that our walls no longer align with the massing that we just created. So if I actually click on the walls that I just created, I'm holding down Control, I'm clicking on all of the walls, okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Update to Face, and what that will do is that will just continue to update the exterior walls per whatever your massing looks like. Okay, so you can change that as much as you want, and that will continue to update on the walls. Okay, so let's look at a couple more features of our massing before we move on to some of our other new material. So if I click on this massing, okay, we have a button called mass floors. This becomes really good for when you're doing something like a skyscraper. Okay, and let's just kind of mimic that real quick. Right now we only have a couple floors in our model, so it's not going to work the greatest, but let's just make this really tall. Let's say this is a skyscraper. Okay, and I'm going to leave these walls down here for now. And before I go to this next step, I'm going to go to my elevations. I'm just going to add a few levels just to make this interesting. Okay, so I'm going to go to Architecture, Level. Let's add an offset of 50, or let's do 10 feet. 10 feet. I'm going to go to my Pick Lines tool. Let's just add a handful of levels to this. None of the elements I created in the elevation. So why is that right now? So let's just check out a couple of things. It's because of this right here. That's why we can't see those levels. Now we can see the levels. Okay, so I'm just going to make my crop region a little bit bigger. And now I can go back, level, pick lines, offset, 10 feet. And let's just add, some levels. I'm not really worried about what those levels are. I can realize that they're actually one level off. That's okay. That will still work for our demonstration. So I'm just going to add, we have about 10 levels right now. Okay, so if I go back to my 3D mode and I click on this massing, I can go to mass floors. Okay, and as you guys may be familiar with, we earlier worked with the paste or the copy to clipboard option. We had the copy to the multiple floors. You're going to notice that this little prompt looks just like that. So if I click on the different levels that I want to mass floors, I'm going to go ahead and select all of them. Okay, and I'm going to hit OK. And notice that we now have a massing for all of the floors that we just created. Okay, so I'm going to end up coming back to this. Okay, one of our topics for discussion today is we're going to learn how to create floors. I'm going to talk about that first, and then we're going to come back to looking at these floors. Okay, so obviously I could have added more, and that would have continued to go up the massing. You're probably starting to see where this is going to start to work really well if you're working on, say, like a 50 or 60 or 80 or 100 level skyscraper. This allows to create sort of the repetition of those larger buildings without necessarily creating a whole lot more work. Okay, so before we move on to creating floors from those masses, let's continue on with our residence. Okay, so if we go back to our residence part 5, the next thing we're going to look at is adding floors. Okay, so we're going to start to get some more depth and some more dimension to our building. All right, so the first floor that we're going to add is, let's add the level 1 floor. So I'm going to go over to my floor plan. I'm going to go to level 1, and let's look at our house right now. So right now we actually have no floor. Okay, so everyone's 3D modeler should look just like this. It's going to be completely transparent. You're going to see through everything. We have nothing to kind of ground our building to. So I'm going to click on level 1, and then from there I'm going to go to architecture, and then I'm going to go and click on floor. Okay, so right here, if you click on the little drop down menu, we're going to click on floor architectural, and then a little bit later we're going to do floor by face. All right, so let's click on floor architectural. Okay, and then from here, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a floor type. Okay, so what that means is right now I've actually already created a floor type because I've done this before, but likely if you click on your different floor types and you click on the little drop down menu, you're probably only going to have 3 or 4 different floor types. You're probably going to have a generic 12-inch, a concrete slab 6-inch, and a couple of these other ones right here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to start with the concrete slab 6-inch. We're going to start with a nice generic, just basic 6-inch slab. Okay, and to create that, what we're going to do is we're going to outline where we want that floor to be inside of our building. Before we outline that, we're going to want to make sure that all of our constraints are proper. Okay, so we're going to create our first one that we're going to create is for level 1. So that looks good. If I wanted to create our second floor level, I would change that to level 2. I'm sorry, if I wanted to create our second floor slab, I would create the level 2 floor slab. Okay, and so on and so forth. You can actually see that you can actually see all of the levels that we created from the massing. We're going to end up deleting all those here in a little bit, but you can see how that's starting to work. So I'm going to go ahead and click on level 1. Okay, and that should be it for now. If you needed an offset, let's say that you had a floor or you had like a little mezzanine that was maybe 3 feet above the level that you're working on, you can add a 3-foot offset to actually start that floor at whatever level that you want to. Okay, so we're not going to need to do that for our residents, but you have the ability to actually put your floor plus or minus whatever it is that your level datum is currently set at. So we're going to work at level 1, and from here I'm going to go up to my draw tools and I'm going to go actually outline our space that we're working with. Okay, so I'm going to go over to the edge here. I'm actually going to go up just a tiny bit, go over to my corner, and continue to outline the interior space of our houses. Okay, so let's do that. Let's outline the exterior border of our building, of our residence, and we're going to go ahead and complete it. So just like when you're editing the profile of your walls, you're going to be getting this pink boundary line. Okay, to know that you're complete for editing your floor, you're going to want to make sure that we have one continuous boundary line. Okay, so as soon as you're done with that, you're going to go ahead and hit the check mark. Okay, it's going to say, would you like walls to go up to the floor's level to attach the bottom? I'm actually going to say no for the bottom level. Okay, we'll likely end up hitting yes for the second level. What this means is that when you hit yes, if there are any walls below the floor slab that you are creating, it will actually attach all of those walls to the floor. Okay, so you're not going to have any awkward spaces between the top of your walls and the bottom of your floor. So technically we shouldn't have any walls below our first level floor minus our foundations. We're just going to go ahead and hit no. Okay, and right now, because that wall is actually below our cut plane, or it's actually at our cut plane and below, you're not going to notice anything. But if you go to your 3D level, or if you go to your 3D view, you'll now notice that we have a floor slab on the interior of our building. Okay, and by that height offset being at 0 and at level 1, what that means is that no matter what materials or finishes you might have for this level, it will make sure that the top or whatever finishes you have always ends up right at 0, 0. Okay, so if you have an inch of hardwood floor on top of the concrete slab, it will actually adjust that accordingly so that the top is always right at 0, 0. All right. So let's go back to our level 1. Let's look at a couple different ways. I'm going to do Control Z, and I'm actually going to backtrack to be prior to creating our pink lines that we have, our pink boundary lines. Let's look at another way we might do this. Okay, another way that you might do this is using your Pick Lines tool. So if you notice, I'm going to click on the interior edges of our wall, okay, and I can start to go through and select all of those interior edges. This starts to work pretty well. It sometimes it's a little better than our previous method, sometimes it's not. It just kind of depends on who's working, but this kind of tells you that you know that for sure the edge of the floor slab is abutting the edge of our wall perfectly. Okay, and there's no questions about it. All right, and then as soon as I select all of those interior boundary walls, I can go and use my trim tool, and I can start to make sure that my boundary is one continuous line. Okay, so I'm going to continue to just use my trim tool like so. That's looking good. Good. Let's close off this boundary. That looks good and good. So I'm going to hit the check mark. I'm going to hit no, and notice that we just have the exact same effect. Okay, so let's do something a little bit differently. Okay, let's say that we want to create a floor slab that's a little bit different than just the basic concrete one. Okay, so let's say that you want to add some nice hardwood floors to our residence. Okay, so I'm going to go back to level 1. Actually, let's go back to our floor slab. I'm going to click on that. I'm sorry, we're going to go back to our 3D view. I'm going to click on that first level slab, or that first level floor assembly, and I'm going to go over and click on edit boundary. Okay, actually I don't need to do that. Let's hit check. No. And let's look at our couple different properties, a couple of our other different floor types. So earlier I actually created a floor type called interior finished floor hardwood. Okay, I'm going to essentially recreate this. Okay, but I'm going to let you guys watch me how I do that. So I'm going to start with a concrete slab at 6 inches, and then like usual I'm going to duplicate it. Let's call it concrete slab 6 inches with hardwood. Okay, so if anybody here is familiar with kind of general construction, it would be no problem to place the hardwood floors directly over the concrete slab. Not a problem at all. So I'm going to say concrete slab with hardwood, and I'm going to hit OK. And from there, just like our wall types, I can go over and I can click on the edit button, and I can start to assemble our floor assembly just like I would a wall assembly. Okay, so just like the wall assembly, I'm going to hit insert. I'm going to move this up. I'm going to go ahead and place this on the top of my floor assembly. This would actually be below. So if you were creating a wall or a floor assembly that was let's say just for the second floor, you could actually add another layer below the core boundary. That might be your gypboard that you would see that you would see from the level below. So typically in your house, if you look up, you can see, your nice, white ceiling, or your nice gypboard white ceiling. That's essentially what you would see if you added a layer below. So I'm going to change the top layer from structure to finish. Okay, let's go ahead and add a thickness to that. Let's say our hardwood floor is, let's just say it's 1 inch thick. Okay, that could vary. It could be a 1/2 inch, it could be 1 inch, it could be even a little thicker depending on what kind of a product you're using. And then from there, I can go and add a material. I'm going to create a new material. Okay, I'm going to go to create new material. Everyone should be fairly familiar with this process. And I'm then going to rename it to hardwood floor. Okay, and then I'm going to go over to appearance, and I'm going to click on no image selected. Of course, you guys never know this process. We're not going to go to where we want to. But if I go over to door, this looks like this should work. I'm going to click on the link there. I'm going to exit out of this. I'm going to go back to my hardwood. Where did it go? Where did it go? Where did it go? Let's search it. Okay, right there. So there's our hardwood wall, our material that we just started creating. I can go to no image. And then from here, now we are in the Autodesk material library. I'm going to go to thumbnails. Okay, and I'm going to go and find a hardwood floor. Luckily, they're right at the very beginning, so this works pretty well. I'm going to choose a nice dark hardwood. Whatever you guys want to pick, doesn't matter to me. You guys can pick whatever flooring material that you guys want for your residence. I'm going to go ahead and hit open. Okay, typically we would go through and we would adjust the scale if you need to. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. I think it's going to be OK for now. And we're going to hit OK again, and now notice that we have this nice hardwood on the interior of our residence. Okay, so if you look really closely, you actually can't really see it. You can barely actually see the cut line of that hardwood floor. But now we actually have a nice interior floor slab with some hardwood on top of that. Scale actually may be a little bit small. Let's just double check that real quick. So let's go back to the hardwood. Let's go to appearance. Let's click on the hardwood. Let's just check that scale. So, okay, this is probably a little bit small. This is 1 foot with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 planks of wood. Well, our planks of wood are not an inch wide. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Let's say this is 4 feet. That makes all of our planks about 3 inches wide. Okay. So, but as you know, there's lots of different wood products out there. This could be a various of different sizes. So I'm going to click done, hit OK again and again. And now, actually that looks great. That looks like the scale that we actually would want on the inside of our residence. Okay, so that's going to be the hardwood for our first floor. Let's go ahead and move on up to the second floor. So I'm going to go to level 2. Okay, and I'm going to zoom in. We're going to actually continue to forget about our massing for now. I'm going to move up to level 2 and do the exact same thing. Before I do that, I'm actually going to add an overlay to the bottom or to my screen so that I can see, I'm sorry, not an overlay, an underlay so that I can see what's going on below. Okay, that'll be very essential to creating the floor slab on the upper level. Okay, so from here, I'm going to go over to my floor, architectural. I'm going to select the hardwood that I just created, and I'm going to continue to outline the space that I want. I want a nice 2-story volume in this space right here. So I'm going to avoid putting a floor assembly in that area. So I'm actually going to just select the outer perimeter, just like so. I'm going to go right up to the edge here of this little assembly below. I'm going to move that down, and I'm going to go ahead and reconnect that right there. Okay, so actually I take that back. Let's go ahead and align this to the closet that we're going to end up creating a little bit later on below. I'd say that looks optimum. Okay, that looks good. And if we go up to our constraints, this says level 2. That looks nice. I'm going to hit the check mark. I'm actually in this situation, I'm going to go ahead and hit yes. Okay, so if I go over to my 3D model, you'll notice that all of the walls below are all connected to the floor assembly above, and that's what we want. Let's see what happens if we would have said no. Actually, this is what would happen if you would have hit no. Okay, all of your walls will continue to show through your floor slab, and that's not what we're really going for. So let's just fast forward to what we had, and this is what we're after right here. Okay, so that's going to be our architectural floor assembly, and that's how we're going to apply them to our residence. So before we move on to stairs and railings, let's look at how we might apply those floors to our massing. Okay, so if I go over to architecture and I go over to floor, I'm going to do floor by face. And then from here, I can actually go through, select all of the floors in our little skyscraper that we're creating. Okay, I'm not going to select all of them, but pretend I did. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and hit create floor. Okay, and you'll notice that we now have a floor assembly on every one of the masses that I just selected. Okay, and if I go through and select all of my exterior walls, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I can go to update to face, and we now have our kind of awkward skyscraper that has no windows. Okay, just like you would add these exterior walls, you can also do the same thing for a curtain wall should you want to do all glass. Okay, we'll actually end up talking about that a little bit later on in the semester. Okay, but that gives you an idea about how the flooring by massing, how the wall by massing option works. Okay, if you wanted to add a curtain wall, I'll just quickly talk about that. Okay, let's get rid of these walls. What I would do, instead of going to the wall by face option, I'm actually going to go over to the curtain system option, and then from there I can actually go through just like we did before, select all of our building faces, okay, and we're going to click on Create System, okay? And then you'll notice that what you actually get from that is actually a series of glass panels, okay? So we don't have any mullions yet. We don't have anything besides the glass panels. And if we go and click on any one of these faces, or we click on actually the curtain system, if I click on the curtain system, it will actually select the entire thing as a whole. Okay, and just like when we were creating the storefront, I can go through and I can edit both our grid 1 and grid 2 layouts and start to create a system, a nice orderly system for that curtain wall. Okay, I'm not going to do that right now, but you can start to see where we're headed with this. Okay, and if I wanted to add mullions to that, which you might, you can do that and select the system. And notice that we have a nice selection of mullions. Okay, so you can kind of make it as easy, as difficult as you want. You can go by grid line, you can go by grid segment, and you can start to create as custom of a skyscraper as you can possibly imagine. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call it quits with the massing for now. We're going to end up talking about this a little bit more later on down the road. So bye-bye. Let's go back to what we were doing here with the residence. Okay. So we just talked about flooring assemblies with inside our residence. Okay, let's look at the next topic for discussion. All right, so from floors, we've talked about creating new floor types. All right, so that's going to work just like creating new wall types. We talked about adding new finishes. Okay, whether it be below the wall or the floor type or above, you should now know how to do that. And we've also talked about adding floors with masses. Okay, so to wrap up our lecture, we're going to go ahead and talk about two topics to finish today. And we're going to talk about adding stairs and adding railings. Okay, and then next class we'll actually talk about some more complicated railing types. I'm sorry, more complicated stair types, and we'll talk about creating stairs from sub-elements and using splitting lines. But let's talk about some of the more basic options first. Okay. So let's go to our first floor plan. All right. First floor plan. And actually, before we talk about those stairs real quick, let's talk about how we could see the surface pattern for our floor assembly. Okay, so right now, if we look at our floor plan, we really can't tell that we have a floor assembly. Okay. We can't really tell that we have a flooring assembly. So our problem is we don't have anything that really identifies a wood flooring texture in our building. Okay, we can clearly see it if we go to our 3D view, but we can't see it when we're in our 2D view. Okay, the reason why that is because the bottom of our view is actually right at the surface of our floor assembly. Okay, so the first thing to check is actually, do we have a surface pattern on this particular floor assembly? Okay, so if we click on it and we go to edit type, let's look at the material that we have for our hardwood. Okay, so if we go over to surface pattern, currently we actually have none. Okay, so that's gonna be the first thing that we're gonna wanna change. All right, so we're gonna click on surface pattern, and then from here, we're going to select a pattern for that surface. So just a quick little recap, let's talk about pattern types. So if you remember, we have two different types of pattern types that we can assign to both walls and floors, okay? And one's gonna be called a drafting type and one's gonna be called a model type. Drafting type is kind of a general pattern, if you will, okay? You'll notice that we have concrete, we have aluminum, and various types of hatching. That drafting type will actually change in scale and size depending on the scale of the view that you're looking in, okay? What we're actually looking at is model type. Any one of these patterns will always be the size that it says regardless of the scale of the view, okay? So in this instance, we're working with hardwood floor. So I'm actually going to scroll down and I'm going to click on wood board wide. Okay, you may also click on just regular wood board. Wood board wide is just a little bit larger of a wood board pattern. So either one would work just fine. Okay, so I'm going to click on wood board wide. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to click OK again and a third time and a fourth time. Okay, so from there, if I go back to level 1, we still don't see anything, okay? And let's figure out why that's not happening. So the reason why is that our view range should actually be stopping right at the top of our flooring assembly. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over to view range. Okay, so view range right here, we're going to click on edit and notice that the bottom of our range is actually right at 0, 0, which is right where the top of our flooring assembly is. I'm going to change the view depth to just a little bit lower. I'm going to change it to just 1 inch below 0, 0. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit apply and OK. All right, of course, I don't see what I'm looking for. Let's look at a couple more different options. So there's kind of a reason why I do this live, because I'm trying to encounter a couple different problems that you guys might also encounter. Let's change the bottom of our primary range also to -1 inch. Let's see if that does the trick. Nope, it's still not doing the trick. Let's go to our level 2. Of course, level 2 is doing exactly what I want. Okay, let's do in our level 2. So I'm gonna forget about level 1 for now. I'll end up going back to this a little bit later to try to figure out why it's not showing that. I can think of a few more different reasons, but let's focus on level 2 here just for a few minutes. So you can see that I see both the pattern on level 1 or on level 2 and on level 1. Okay, earlier we actually added an underlay. So I'm going to change that underlay to none so that all I see is actually just the material that is on level 2. I'm going to get rid of these dimensions. These are kind of annoying. So I'm going to go ahead and do right click. I'm going to go to hide in view category. So that will hide all of my dimensions. Okay, so but now all I see is just the hardwood floor on the second level and nothing on the first level. So that's good. That's exactly what I want to see. You don't want to see what all the stuff that's on the level below. But let's go to level 1. I'm not going to spend too much time trying to figure out what the problem is. I'm going to look at one more thing though. If I go over to my visibility graphics, let's go to edit and I'm going to go to annotation. And let's just make sure that nothing here is turned off. Everything looks checked for now. Model categories, let's look at this as well. Look what we have here. So notice that the floors, the visibility of our floors is actually unchecked. That's the reason why we're not seeing what we're seeing. Hopefully, I guess we'll find out here in a second. So I'm gonna go ahead and check that. I'm gonna hit OK, and now I actually see the floor assembly, although I still don't see my pattern. Let's go back and look at a couple more things real quick. So we have floors. Okay, so if I go up to patterns, notice that it says hidden. I'm not sure exactly why this happened, but this is a good example of where to look if you can't find something. Always check your visibility graphics. Always check to see how it's currently set up. So I'm going to change the override from hidden to visible. I'm going to hit OK. OK again. Perfect. So now we have, now we can actually see our material of our floor below. So we're starting to get some life and some character to our interior space. Okay. So we have what we want. All right. So let's move on to our next topic now that we're done with floors. All right. So our next topic that we're going to talk about is adding stairs. Okay. And from here, what we're going to want is, if you guys have seen the model from the past, we're actually going to add some stairs that take us from our first level up to our top level, okay? And we're going to start by creating a very basic stair assembly. So I'm going to go to my level 1, okay? And we know that our level 2 floor structure actually starts right here at the edge of this wall, okay? If you really wanted to, you could actually start it from the second level and go down if you want to, but we know where that floor structure actually starts, okay? So let's go ahead and create this basic stair. So if we go over to architecture, we're gonna go over to where you see the button that says stair. And if you guys that are experienced in using AutoCAD, you probably hate drawing stairs. I actually recently had to draw a set of stairs in AutoCAD and it was just miserable. It took me probably 2 hours to create this nice set of stairs that went from the top of a parking structure to the bottom of the parking structure. So, and it was miserable. Revit does a really good job in creating and making this extremely easy, okay? So just like our wall and floor assemblies, we're going to have stair assemblies as well. And what we're going to use, we're actually just going to end up using just the Revit recommended stair assembly, which is 7-inch max and 11-inch tread. For those of you that maybe work in the business, that's actually the ADA, the acceptable ADA stair in any type of facility. So legally, by ADA standards, you cannot create a stair that has risers that are taller than 8 inches, and you can't have treads that are less than 11 inches. So that's the reason why this is already put inside of Revit. Okay, so if you wanted to make those larger, or I'm sorry, if you wanted to make the riser smaller, you could do that. You can also make the tread wider, and that would be acceptable by ADA terms. Okay, so just like our walls, we're going to first set our constraints. Okay, so our base level is going to be level 1, and the top of our stair is going to be at level 2. Okay, so you'll notice that below that it says desired number of risers. By default, Revit will automatically assign the what it feels as the correct number of risers to get from level 1 to level 2. And that's going to be 17. Okay. If you wanted to change that to something higher, you could do that. If you made it lower, you would actually end up altering the dimensions of that ADA acceptable stair. So we're just going to leave it as is. That will work just fine for what it is that we're doing. Okay, so next we have a couple more things that we can look at prior to drawing the stair. We're going to leave the location line to center. Okay, so you also have left, right, and center. You'll figure out what that means in just a second as I start to draw that. But you have an offset, so if you want to actually start the stair maybe a foot above level 1, that would be something that you can do. A foot below level 1, that's also okay. So the actual run width, so how wide do we want our stairs, okay? So if I actually measure really quickly, our stairs should probably be, that's kind of a weird dimension, but let's actually go to right here. Let's do 3-foot stairs, because we're gonna end up doing these to the inside face of that wall. So let's do 3-foot stairs. Okay, so if I click on over here, the first one we're gonna do is we're going to create a straight component. So let's click on that, and we're going to leave the run width at 3 feet. Okay, so I'm going to pick a place to start my stair. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it for now. Okay, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to start to drag my mouse up towards my end location. Okay, notice that when I start, okay, you'll notice that you have a little silhouette of the stair. Okay, what that silhouette represents is what the end stair is going to look like. If I go all the way up to the top, it says 17 risers created just below my, whoops, sorry, let me go backwards, I accidentally clicked. Okay, so if I click on that stair and I start to draw it, you'll notice that it tells you the number of risers created and the number of risers remaining till you get to the level that you're trying to get to. Okay, if I go all the way up to the top, it's going to say 17 risers created and 0 remaining, and that would be the stair assembly that we need to create to get to the upper level. Okay, so you can do that in a variety of fashions. If you wanted to say, for example, do 5 or 6 steps then a landing, that could be an option, or you can just go right up to the very top. Let's do both. Let's say we want to do both. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it all the way up to the very top, and I'm going to click, and that will give us our stair assembly. So right now it's actually kind of overlapping our walls. It's not where we want it to be. So let's select the entire thing. I'm going to click on the move tool, and I'm going to align the stringer of the stair with the edge of our wall. Okay, that looks pretty good. But if we notice that our stair is actually 3 feet wide, it's actually 3'4" total, because we have a 3 foot clear stair width. Okay, so if I click on this, I'm actually going to make this a little bit narrower. I'm going to make this 2'8", 2'8", because I want the inside of that stringer to actually be on the inside face of that wall. Okay, let's just realign this. you stupid blue square. Come on, move it. Okay, that looks good. Now our stringer is right on the inside face of that wall. That looks good. So from here, we've created our stair. It's 2 foot 8 inches clear, which is actually okay, which is actually perfectly fine for a residential stair. And it's 3 foot wide total, okay? And then from there, I'm gonna go over and hit the check mark, and we now have our stair, okay? So you can realize how much easier that was than creating a stair inside CAD. So it gives us all of our graphics that we would typically place on a floor plan. It tells us that the treads are going up. It shows the stringer. It shows the handrail, okay? It also shows the dash line that represents the nosing of the stair beneath the tread. So it shows us all of the information that we need to graphically show our stair. And if we go to our 3D mode, you'll notice that we now have our stair, we now have our stringers, we now have our railings, we have everything that we need to get right up to our second floor. And you also notice that it stopped it just below our floor, so that the floor acts as the final step to get up to where we want to be. Okay, so that's going to be our straight floor assembly. Okay, let's look at a couple more different scenarios. That's actually exactly what we want for this residence, but let's look at a couple more ways that we could do this. I'm just backtracking a little bit. I'm going to click on the straight stair component again, and let's create a landing. So I'm going to do maybe 5 steps. I'm going to move up maybe about 4 feet or so. All right, you guys will probably take a few more seconds to actually measure it, and then I can continue. Notice that it still tells you the number of risers that you need to get to the top. It gives you the landing that you need, and ultimately gives us the same number of risers that we're going to want to get to the top. Okay, I could hit check. This obviously doesn't line correctly up or correctly with our building, but you can see that we now have a set of stairs with a landing, and then we have more stairs that continue. Okay, let's look at a couple different more. Okay, so if we go back to architecture, we go to stair, we have a couple other different stair configurations that we could possibly create. So using the straight stair component, let's actually continue that, but let's create a 90-degree turn. So what you might do, whoops, let's change the top off, or the top level to level 2. What you might do is, let's say this door is not here, and let's say we want to start our stair from this side. So what we might do is we might do something like this, where we do 5 or 6 steps, all right? And then maybe I bring my mouse over here and I draw the last 8 steps or so on this side, okay? That's another option that you might have. Maybe you want a 90-degree turn in your stair, and actually, for all I really care, you could do that for this residence if you want to. That's not a problem at all. Okay, if you don't want a straight stair, that would work well, although it kind of protrudes into our living room. It may not work the greatest, but whatever you guys want to do is fine. So if I hit the check mark, you'll see that we now have a 90-degree turn. Okay, and you can make that turn in whatever way that you want. Okay, so we'll do a couple more before we move on to railings. All right, so let's click on stair, I'll click on straight assembly, and notice that if I want to do like a 60-degree turn, it's just as easy as a 90 or a straight. Okay, so you can do whatever shape that you want. Basically, you're drawing the start, you're drawing the middle, and you're drawing the end. Okay, and so now we have a nice kind of actually a pretty kind of unique stair shape that would look really nice on a lot of houses. Okay, so that's an option as well. So moving on, we also have a couple different other options, one called a full step spiral. We also have one called a center end spiral. We also have an L-shaped winder and a U-shaped winder. I'm just going to look at one of these. Let's look at the first one. I'll let you guys kind of discover the others on your own. But let's look at that circular staircase. So let's say I actually wanted to get up to the top. I can actually draw that staircase just like I would our other one. I'm going to create a start and an end location. Go ahead and click, and we now have a spiral staircase. Okay, so right now it doesn't actually align with our floor. we'll actually create another staircase a little bit later that does. Okay, maybe we go up to level 2 and we could do the same thing. Let's see if we can actually get this to look correct. So this little arrow shows that we're going down. I'm going to hit the check mark. Okay, this actually looks pretty good. It's actually backwards. So if I go over to my level 2 and I click on that stair, I can actually just click on this little arrow right here, and that will flip our stair. So now if I go and look at it, now our circular stair actually goes right up to where we want it to be, and it ends down into our living room. So that would be another option that you may have, okay? So feel free to check out the other different options, okay? If you want to do a different stair shape that's a little bit different than kind of what's suggested, okay? So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go back to our just traditional straight stair. So I'm going to go click on straight stair segment, and I'm going to draw that right up to the top. Let's actually change our width to 2'8", 2 space 8, and from there I can draw my staircase. Okay, let's align it, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the check mark. Okay, so now we have plenty of room to walk up. We have room right in front of it, and we can get right up to our second level. So let's go ahead and move on to railings, okay? The last topic that we're going to discuss today is railings, all right? So if you click on our stair, you'll notice that you actually have the option to edit all of the little individual components, just like you would several of our other pieces that we've worked with, okay? So I can click on the stair. I can actually tab through the stair and click on things like the stringer. Notice that we have a stringer right there. Okay, right now it's actually all currently locked. If I want to unpin it, I can unpin it, and I can start to edit those individual components of the stair. But let's focus on the railings. If I click on the railings, we can actually go over here and change our railing type. Okay, so let's say that we didn't like the railings that by default Revit gave us for this stair. We could click on both of those and we can start to change those. Maybe you want a pipe railing. Maybe that's the effect that you want right there. Okay, so maybe you want a pipe railing. All right, maybe you want a glass railing. So glass panel, that could be an option as well. I'm going to go ahead and leave it on glass railing. Okay, it's a nice contemporary option that looks pretty good. Okay, so from there, I can actually continue to add other railings on the second floor. So right now, if we walked up to the top, we actually could walk up there but still potentially fall off. That's not what we want to do, of course, okay? So let's look at a couple different options and how we might add some railings to our second floor. There's 2 ways that we can do this. I'm going to go to my second floor plan and let's look at the first way. So I'm going to go over to architecture and I'm going to click on railing. And if I click on the little drop down menu, I'm going to click on railing by sketch path. Okay, so from here, I can actually just going to draw the exact path that I want my railing to be at. Okay, so I am going to actually use my pick lines tool and I'm going to offset my railings 2 inches from the edge of my floor. Okay, that'll actually allow the posts to be in a really nice location right on the edge of the floor. And I'm going to move that line right to the back. Okay, and I'm going to draw one more line so that it aligns with the stair from my, so that it aligns with my railing from my stair. So notice that if this this railing right here actually turned into a pink line, it would actually align right with the one that we just created. Okay, so from there I can go ahead and hit the check mark. Okay, and if I go to my 3D mode, you'll notice that we now have a railing on the edge of our floor slab. I could select that, change it to a glass fill, and that starts to enclose the second floor space. Okay, I can go back to my level 2 and I can do the same exact thing for this other side. Okay, so I'm going to click on railing. I'm going to click on glass bottom fill. I'm going to offset my railing 2 inches from the edge. Oh, sorry, shoot, looks like my Revit's about to crash, but I'm going to save a recovery file. Okay, so you guys actually might have this happen to you. So I'm going to save a recovery file to my desktop. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. You guys may have already had this happen to you once, okay? I'm not going to send the report. I know what the problem is. I just need to do an update to my Revit. Okay, so this isn't something that you just might encounter, but I saved it to my desktop. Shouldn't be a problem. Let's go ahead and open this up again. And we're back up. Okay, so as much as great as Revit is, it does have its problems and it does have its quirks. You will have times when it will crash and you will have to start all over again. Luckily, most of the time it does save a recovery file. Okay, so let's continue from where we are. I'm going to go ahead and click on Railing, Sketch Path, and I'm going to click on the Pick Lines tool, and I'm going to offset 2 inches from the edge of an unrecoverable error. The program will not be terminated. Okay, great. So we're still having the same problem here. Unfortunately, I don't know why it is doing that. I'm just going to hit OK. Okay, so for whatever reason, it didn't like me picking the edge of that wall. So I'm just going to do something a little bit different. You guys should still be able to do the same thing. Okay, so I'm just going to draw it in place just like we did over here on the other side. So I'm going to draw that line, connect it to our original railing. Okay, so just like so. This is actually probably a little too close. That looks pretty good. Okay, so from there, I'm going to go ahead and hit the check mark. Something to keep in mind when you guys are doing railings is that you have to have one continuous path. I couldn't draw this line and then go over and draw this line. That's why I actually did this in 2 separate steps, okay? So if I go ahead and actually let's just show you how this works. If I drew a railing right there, and then I hit the check mark, it's going to say you can't do that. So I'm going to hit continue. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to hit the check mark again. And we now have the second railing for our project. Okay, I'm going to change both of those railings to a glass railing to match the one that I just created. Let's save this. Okay, so that looks pretty good. We're starting to get kind of the result that we're looking for. The one thing that I just don't like, and it's not perfect for my kind of architectural eye, is that we have a gap between these 2 railings. The average person probably wouldn't notice, and actually in plan view you couldn't tell the difference, but in a 3D view you actually can. Plan you can't, 3D view you can. So let's look at an alternate way to create these railings other than the way that we did it. Okay, so I'm going to delete the first 2 that we just created, and instead of drawing complete new ones, I'm actually going to edit the ones that came with our stair. Okay, so I'm going to click on the first one, and I'm going to click on Edit Path. And let's go to our level 2 floor plan again, and notice that we have a line that represents that staircase. And instead of creating a whole new one, I'm actually just going to continue this one just like the one that I did before. So I'm going to draw this out 1 inch, like so, and I'm going to draw it all the way over to meet the wall. Okay, let's do that one more time. Okay, the reason why I actually drew a new line versus extending the original line is that when I actually have a break in the line, it actually signifies to Revit that you're actually going to have a break in the railing as well. So usually I always do that whenever I have a change in elevation. Okay, so right now we're going from sloped, and then it's going to be flat for just a couple inches, and then it's going to turn to continue to be flat. So I'm going to hit the check mark, and notice that we actually have a nice seam on that railing. That looks good. That's the way that I actually really would like that railing to look. That looks much nicer. Okay, so that's the actual effect that we're going after for this project. Okay, either would really be fine, but this actually gives a little bit nicer of an effect. So again, I'm going to click on that railing, click on Edit Path. All right, I'm going to go back to my floor plan, and I'm just going to continue drawing this on the other side of my floor. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and hit the check mark, and now we have a railing that turns and wraps and dies into our wall. So that looks pretty good. That's overall what we are after for this exercise, okay? So that's gonna be it. That's gonna be kind of a brief introductory to railings. Both railings, also stairs and floor slabs, okay? We'll end up picking up all these topics a little bit later on in the semester, okay? Actually, we won't pick up floors later on in the semester. That's actually gonna wrap that up for floors, as it's actually fairly simple. But next class, or in a class in the near future, we'll look at how to create additional types of stairs, and we'll actually look at how to create some custom staircases as well. But for now, we're going to go ahead and sign off. That will give you all of the tools that you need to finish the next steps of the residence. If you guys finish that too quickly, also take the time to kind of get caught up if you're not caught up. But what you should be looking for by the end of this exercise is adding the two different floor slabs, along with, I believe there may be a couple others as well. I think there may be some. Actually, let's just look at it real quick. Why not? Sorry, I accidentally deleted it. But you guys should be creating the two interior floor slabs. There may also be some exterior ones as well. So you'll create those along with your staircase up to your second floor and your railings. That's what you're ultimately looking for the residence part 5. If you guys have any questions, we'll go ahead and answer those next week, or you can also send me an email should you need to. All right, so good luck, and we'll see you guys next week.